Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class. Breakfast in the Class today is sponsored and dedicated by Emmanuel Zara in honor of his father Yaakov ben Miriam ve'Ezra. Love you, Dad. Chodesh Tov. Also, the year of Breakfast in the Class is dedicated in loving memory of Nishmat Ruth Orfali bat Adela aleh Shalom, sponsored by her family. Refuah Shlema for Rabbi Shlomo Farhi and dedicated to the continued health of Chana bat Tzemefega. The learning for this entire week and as well for this entire year is dedicated by our Torah Center namesake donors Margaret and Daniel S. Loeb. Hazak Baruch. Hashem should bless you. Me'ata va'ad olam. Okay, let us begin. The pasuk says in our parasha, "V'lo yachelu echav la'anot oto ki nivhalu mipanav." His brothers could not answer him, for they were shaken. Nivhalu means they shrunk back. Different words they use, but in all instances it indicates an element of being shaken by the ramifications of what you're witnessing. Like we find Vayavhilu et Haman, right? Behala means when something is done with in a very torrid way, where a person's pulled apart, pulled in many different directions. They're all over the place because of the great power of those emotions. Let's begin, my friends, in unpacking this sentence. The brothers could not answer him. They were speechless because nivhalu mipanav. They were embarrassed. They were humiliated. They were torn apart in front of him. What caused this great shaking up of his brothers? Anyway, let's visit the Pesukim and we'll see what it was that really moved them to such a place. The Pasuk tells us that when the brothers, the Shvatim, they came to Egypt, Yosef sent them home after having the meal. He sent all of his brothers home with all the food in their bags, and then he put his special cup in the bag of Binyamin. Anyway, they leave. Yosef sends one of the people in the court to go chase them. They've stolen my cup. Go find it. They check the bags, and as they check the bags, they find the cup is in the bag of Binyamin. They bring everyone back to Egypt for having stolen the cup, the goblet, the divining goblet of Yosef HaSadiq. And when they get there, Yosef says, "How could you have done this? You guys, you pay back good with evil. I'm going to keep Binyamin as a slave." At that point, our parasha begins. Vayigash Yehuda, and Yehuda comes forward to battle, to plead the case. And he says, "Please, you can't keep Binyamin. You got to let him go back to his father. We had a brother. The brother was torn apart. It destroyed my father. If you keep Binyamin, his brother, his younger brother, it will cause him to die. Please, let him go. I will stay here instead of him. I'm much more fit. I'm much more strong. Take me. I'm better than him in every way." Okay? Yosef HaTzadik can't hold back out of the great emotion of that moment. And he throws all the Egyptians out of the room. And he says to his brothers, "Ani Yosef ha'od avi chai." I am Yosef. Is my father still alive? And it is to that statement that the pasuk says, "Velo yachelu echav la'anot oto." They could not answer. Ki nivhalu mipanav. Asks the Bet HaLevi, "I don't understand. You asked your brothers when they were in Egypt." We'll shout out to Shlomo Amsalem, who asked me this question on Shabbat. He asked the brothers when they were in Egypt, "How's my father doing? Ha'od avichai?" Right? He asked them, "How's your father?" At that point, they didn't know it was his father, but he'd already asked them how their father was doing. And they told him, "Good." "Is your father okay?" What was the answer? They said, "Vayomeru, shalom le'avadecha le'avinu, odenu chai," he's still alive. Vayikdu ve'ishtachavu. So the last information that they had was that his father was still alive. What had happened since then? They had a meal. They went on their way back, and he stopped them right outside of Egypt. They've not gotten home yet. Yaakov Avinu did not update his relationship status. Yaakov on Facebook, he did not post any stories on Instagram. There were no snaps that they would have seen. So their information at this point as to the welfare of their father was no better or worse than it was before. So some commentators, in dealing with this problem, say that Yosef was asking the brothers, he was saying, I know that you told me Dad's okay, but that was when you were answering me and you didn't know who I was. At that point, maybe you told me Dad's okay because you didn't want to bother, you didn't want to mess up the story, you didn't want to complicate things. But now you know I'm your brother, how's Daddy doing? The question is, what would have caused for the great upset, the great confusion, the great bewildered nature of the Kiniv Halumi Panav? So the Bet HaLevi takes a different tack, he takes a different route in explaining what it was that Yosef said that was such a bomb. He explains that Yehuda, he had just finished giving this whole speech about how you can't take Binyamin. You know why? It's not fair. I know he made a mistake. I know he stole from you. I know that this is the rule. I know that this is the law. But you have to have compassion. Because if you take Binyamin, what's going to happen? If his father sees, Vamet is going to die. The blow it will strike to our father, our aging, our ailing father, is something he'll never recover from. Have mercy, have compassion. Says the Bet HaLevi, Yosef says, I'm Yosef. Ha'od avichai. Did my father survive me? When you sold me, did he survive that? You're asking me now for mercy. That's what you care so much about your dad. Where was that care for your father? You don't like me? Fine. You want to sell me? Fine. But you're coming now, pretending like you care about for your father. Did you care about Daddy then? We all know that which son did he like the most? Yosef. Ki oto ahav mikol banav. If you cared about the impact that this was going to have on your father, where was that care then? Velo yachelu la'anot, and they could not answer oto ki nivhalu mipanav, because the musar was like a slap in the face. My friends, I want you to understand the nature of this musar and how it relates to us. Gemara says, Oy lanu miyom adin, oy lanu miyom atochacha. Woe is to us from the day of judgment. Woe is to us from the day of rebuke. That as Yosef said to the brothers, Ani Yosef, I am Joseph, and they could not answer him. When we get to heavens, after 120, or in the time of Mashiach, on the great day of judgment, Yom Adin HaGadol VeHaNorah, on that great day of judgment day, what will God say? He will say, not Ani Yosef, he will say, Ani Amonai Elokeche. I am Hashem your God. And what will we answer then? The question is, my friends, what is the connection between Ani Yosef, Ha'od Avichai, and the ramifications of its musar, of its rebuke, and Ani Hashem? And the commentators explain that both of them carry the exact same slap in the face level musar as each other. You see, Yosef was telling Yehuda, your claim is that you care. Well, if you really cared, how could that be? How would you have been able to carry out the dastardly deed that you did back then? How could you have done that? What's so powerful is that in that moment, Yosef is not judging them by his measuring stick or by society's measuring stick. He's judging them by their own presented measuring stick. You're asking me to have compassion, asking me how I could be so heartless as to not have compassion for an elderly father who's going to have a heart attack from losing his son. But you didn't have that. You're asking me for something that you don't have, that you're not doing? At the very least, achieve, be at the level that you're demanding of me in this relationship. So too, in the rebuke of Ani Hashem Elokechem, at the end of time, we're going to come to God and we're going to say to God, look, it was very hard. I wasn't able to do this. I wasn't able to do that. And God's going to say, but why didn't you keep Shabbat? And why didn't you eat the kosher food? And why didn't you study Torah? And why didn't you give your time and your money and your advice and your powers and skills to charity to help other people? And why didn't you follow the mitzvah of tzitzit, of the mitzvah of tefillin? Rabbi, please. Tzitzit makes you sweat. I don't like it. I don't like sweating. I don't like it. I don't like sweating. But what do you do when you go to the gym? And when you play basketball? And when you sit outside on the beach, you're taking a tan? What do? Mr. I hate sweat. You figured out how to deal with that sweat for those things. So what is your answer when it comes to this? I want you to hear the power of this idea. I meet guys sometimes and they'll be like, Rabbi, listen, I love the whole Judaism thing, love it. Sometimes when you give the talks, the musar, I feel like you're talking to me. It's different, slaps hard. I love it. But Rabbi, I'm just not that intensive a guy. All the things and the laws and, I'm a chill guy. I'm relaxed, I'm just kidding. I'm not so detail oriented. I'm always, Meanwhile, you go out for the guy, you go grab breakfast after the class on one day that you didn't come here. You go to the guy at the bagel store. The guy says, I'd like an egg, everything bagel, scooped out, toasted on both sides. Put cream cheese on the top, but on the bottom, put garlic butter. I want tomatoes, but the sun-dried ones, and please don't have them the full one. Cut them into small pieces. On the egg, please, if you could put in the cheese and the omelet, don't put it in the beginning, put it in right at the end. Also, I don't like this. Suddenly the guy, he has more opinions than the whole Shas. He's not so chilled when it came to his omelet. All of a sudden, every day, this is on the side, and that's in the side, and this, and bring that, and please don't bring the thing until after. I don't want the first the thing, and then the other thing should come later, because I like it only if it's hot, but not too hot. For everything else, it's got to be exactly right. Only here, you're Mr. Chill. The lack of congruence is something that in Shamayim, God says, I don't understand. If you were a guy who cared about nothing, fine. But you're very particular about the car, and about your clothes, and about your shoes. You mind. Shatnez, who could be bothered to check if my jacket has wool or linen? Is that really? Aren't you the guy that spends 20 minutes looking at every suit jacket, if it's 110s or 120s or 150s? Who doesn't want the regular wool, you want the cashmere wool. You know very well how to check the ingredients, Ya'ani, on your clothes, but only not for wool and linen. The thing that's asur, only that. You're chill and this is too intense. My friends, it's the lack of congruence which ultimately gets us on Yom Hadin. Now let me express this idea from two different perspectives. Powerful idea that emerges from a funny story. You had a bunch of guys, they were party animals. All the boys. The guys are gonna mess things up. They're gonna wreck the place. If it's not even the boys, it's the boys, okay? Anyway, the boys, they party hard, they drink, they dance, they go out, they have the best time ever, they go here, they go there, they have best vacations, they hit the town, everything at the best time, da-da-da-da. Anyway, they make a pact between them. Guys, whoever leaves this world first, they're getting ready, a bit older, the party days should have been behind them, but now they're getting a little, whoever goes first, let him come back and tell us what things are like in the next world. Anyway, one guy, all right, bites the bullet, kicks the bucket, and other euphemisms. That first night, he comes to all the crew, the whole crew in a dream. Simulcast. He says, listen guys, I'm here in the heavens. It's not so easy, things are a little bit difficult. They look at him, they see his face, his clothing, it's all burned like he's been in a fire, right? They ask him, what's going on? He says, I have one bit of advice, very important you follow me on this. Very important. He said, just do whatever you like, just don't drink whiskey. Just whiskey, stay away from whiskey. You'll be fine. They're like, what? He said, I'll tell you what happened. I got in there, the heavenly court, I don't know. They start asking about all these things that I didn't do. I didn't do this, I didn't keep that, I didn't study the Torah. And I said, listen, I don't know what you want from my life. You want me to study Torah? It's not easy. I went to the class a couple times. The rabbi was boring. Right? He was going on and on and on. It was too long. Right? They say you have a TLDR. Right? Too long, didn't read. Chalas, I couldn't handle. Class is this, it's that. I kept breaking my head on the words. It's too much, too heavy, too much work to get involved. They're talking about the springs and the clearing them out and digging new ones and irrigated fields. I don't know what's going on, forget it. So I couldn't handle. Anyway, they said, okay, no problem. They said, so what was your favorite, what did you like to drink? I thought it was funny that in the heavenly court they're asking me what I like to drink. So I told them, I'm, what they say at the end of the commercials that go on getting mortgages or taking out loans, right? What's the famous line at the end, right? About how they don't discriminate between who they give loans to, right? They give loans to everybody. He says, I was not a drink racist. Didn't matter to me what color. It didn't matter to me if it was arak, if it was amaretto, if it was, doesn't make a difference. If it had the word percentage on it in the front of the bottle, I was in. Wine, anyway, the court said, listen, wine we understand, delicious. Arak, very sweet. Amaretto, fantastic. But whiskey, how'd you drink whiskey? Whiskey tastes terrible. The guy says, whiskey tastes terrible. He hates the fact that someone talks about his true great love in such a way. He says, if whiskey tastes terrible, he says, you've been drinking the wrong whiskey. The judge in the heavenly court says, oh, do tell. He says, yeah, you don't know, had this amazing bottle, it's this amount of years, in this cask, and that cask, and the other cask, 16 different casks, unbelievable, best thing you ever had in your life. I'm going to get you a bottle, just sort me out, I'll figure it out, The guy says, oh, fantastic, that sounds great. Says the judge in the heavenly court, that sounds great. He says, tell me, but you always loved whiskey? He says, yeah. He goes, from the first, he goes, no, not from, nobody likes whiskey on the first drop. You gotta, first it burns, hard, it's difficult. You swallow it, you're a little bit nauseous, but as time goes on, right, in the beginning you're drinking it because you want to be with the big boys. You got the little cup over there, heka like this. But, if you stick with it, you start to develop a taste. Shema Yisrael. The leather, the vanilla, the molasses, the maple syrup, in the front, in the back, the finish, the nose. Shtabach Shema, Todah Lael. Anyway, the heavenly court, the judge smiles and he says, oh, so you mean that there are things that are bitter and burn and are nauseous and horrible in the beginning, but if you stick with them, they warm your insides. If you stick with them, they make you happy. You stick with them, you're ready to party. He says, yes. He says, and I fell in the trap. And they said, then you should have studied Torah until it became sweet, until it brought you life, until it warmed your insides. Because Torah and mitzvot, that's what they're like. It's hard to give tzedakah in the beginning, but you give enough tzedakah, you become addicted to helping, to giving. It's the sweetest feeling in the world to give to someone, to help someone. Much more, much sweeter than the feeling of holding on to your stuff, of not giving, of using it for yourself. So if you could have done it for the whiskey, you could have done it for the Gemara, you could have done it for the charity, you could have done it for the tzitzit, you could have done it for the tefillin, for the prayers. The Midrash in Esther Rabbah says, all day long you're talking. You're hacking about Josh Allen and Shador Sanders and the Giants in the draft. No problem. Talking for hours. Fantastic. All of a sudden you come to pray. For those of you listening to audio, I just fell asleep. Now you're sleeping. Only now. You have all the energy in the office. Now you came to the Gemara class, you're out cold, a pool of drool on the Gemara page. Now you're tired. You have all the time in the world for your friends. You come home for your family. Yeah, I need some time now. For us, you don't have time. For them, you have time. If you had time for nobody, fine. But you figured out how to make time for that. You know? I remember once you were on a very fancy vacation. Anyway, at this very fancy vacation, a guy comes and he's collecting tzedakah. And the guy says, listen, Rabbi, tough year, he says. At the vacation, that cost him like $200,000 for the family. He's telling the poor guy who wants $5, it's a tough year. You had the money for this. So it's not a she'elah of if you got it or you don't have it. It's a she'elah of what you value and what your priorities are. So the guy says to the boys, guys, just don't drink whiskey, you'll be fine. Because then they won't get you. Missed the whole point. Yeah, I missed the whole point. Now obviously, it's only a humorous anecdote, which I'm sure will happen to many people. And then it won't be so humorous. And by the way, doesn't this happen all the time? You know? A wife sees her husband. He walks into the wedding with her. He's, she's talking to him, he's exhausted. All of a sudden he sees his good friend. Hey! How does she feel? He wakes you up. I put you to sleep. If you're exhausted for him, fantastic. It's the congruence that will be the measuring stick that judges us. Now I want you to understand, this is not a gotcha moment. Oh, if you didn't have whiskey, they can't get you. I'll give you an example of this gotcha. I said I'm going to give you two perspectives. There were two rabbis in the yeshiva of Navardak. And there was a wedding that they had to go to. In order to get to this wedding, they had to go travel at midnight on a train, a long train ride, to be able to get to this place where they're going to have the wedding on time. They're going to get back, they're going to travel through the night, Anyway, the rabbi goes to he says to the elderly rabbi, he says, I'll pick you up at midnight, I'll be by your house, we'll go to the train station. Anyway, he gets to the door, knocks on the door, the rabbi says, go, travel on ahead with me. Doesn't open the door. He says, I'm not going to come. All right? He's very nervous, gets on the train, he's thinking the whole time, this is not a rabbi who changes his plans willy-nilly. He's a very misudar guy. If he said he was going to go, he's going to go. He must not be feeling well. The whole way he's nervous. How's the rabbi? He goes to the wedding. He's thinking about the rabbi. Comes back. The next day, the man tells him, the rabbi says, how was the wedding? He says, it was fantastic. But he says, I was nervous the whole time. I was thinking about you. That you should have a refuah shlema. He said, what refuah shlema? He said, I'm fine. He says, yeah, but I came to the house, we agreed. And when I knocked on the door, you told me to go ahead without you. I was sure you weren't feeling great. He says, no, that's not it at all. I'm feeling fine. He says, so why didn't you come? He says, I got out of bed, I got dressed, I put everything in my bag, I came to the door, and right as I came to the door, I thought to myself, you know something? Every night, I study Torah, I do mitzvot. And how do I end my day? I end my day when I feel like I don't have any more strength to do anything more. And I go to bed at a certain time. But all of a sudden I thought, in Shamayim, they're going to ask me, if you can't stay up later, how did you manage to do it when it came to the wedding? When it came to the fun thing, how did you manage to pull out that? How come for that you were... I decided I don't want that on my plate, so I didn't go. Now, let me be clear. The rabbi wasn't saying that if you don't go on that train ride, if you don't drink whiskey, you'll be safe in Shamayim. Because you know what? I didn't try something that was difficult in the beginning till you develop the taste. To paraphrase Jackie Mason, you develop a taste. You never had to develop a taste for a potato chip. You know why? Because it tastes good. I'm laughing because I just told myself a better joke than I told you. My friends, it's not the gotcha in heaven. It's let's be honest with ourselves. And the only way of checking your honesty is by following the pattern of your own behavior. The Zohar says that Avraham Avinu reached the highest level of perfection. And you know how we know? Because from Shamayim they called out to him, Avraham, Avraham, Vayomer Hineni. Says the Zohar, what does that moment mean? It means that in every person's life, there's a Shlomo down here, and there's a Shlomo up in Shamayim. That is my spirit, my neshama. And oftentimes, that version of you and this version of you are very far apart from one another. But if God could call out, Avraham, Avraham, if the Avraham on high and Avraham below was synonymous, they were in the same place, they could be mentioned together in the same breath, then that's a level of perfection. Most of us, my friends, live at odds with our best self. We're not there. And the way you can tell if you're there or not there is by checking your own behavior. Now, is it true that a person needs to sleep? Yes. Yes, it is true. But let me ask you, what do you make exceptions for? You know, there's this crazy thing. It's called binge watching. What does binge watching mean? I was just introduced to this term. Not just, but what's that? What's the concept, binge watching? Binge watching is you turn on a show, wow, you saw the first episode, gotta see the second one. So you tell yourself, it's late, you know what? How long is it? Okay, I can watch one more, now go to bed. Then you watch another one, cliffhanger. Gotta watch the next one. Okay, it's not gonna be too late. I'll watch, last one, promise you, my last one. You watch it, cliffhanger again. They're not stupid. Right? Just when you think you're out, they reel you back in. You watch another one, another one, another one. My friends, I love that you could binge watch your favorite murder, story, true crime, podcast, or whatever. Love it. Great. But how many of you would send me a message like I got a week ago? A guy who was flying back from Israel on El Al sends me a picture of the El Al screen where they have breakfast in the class on the El Al screen. He says, Rabbi, I'm with you for the next 10 hours. I said, nobody likes me that much. Even my wife will get sick of me 10 hours in a row. Chalas. And you know what it reminded me of? Years and years ago, we took a group of students on a flight to Australia. And the flight is so long. So I was sitting behind a group of the students from London, all secular kids. What they decide they're going to do for this journey, this plane journey from the UK to Australia. The 18-hour flight and then the transfer. We were in transit for almost 30 hours in Majnoon. What'd they do? They all sat in one row and they shared a screen and they watched an entire series of a thing called 24. I think the idea was that it's supposed to be 24 hours, the show. I don't know if the actual show is 24 hours. Is it actually 24 hours? So they watched 24 hours in a row, they watched. Who? I do not envy that day in the heavenly court. They're going to walk them in and they're going to show them a library that's 10 times the size of our library here in the Midrash. They're going to show them the library that like they have in Oxford University. They're going to show them the library from the movie Beauty and the Beast. You know, it's just thousands and thousands and thousands of books of Sefarim. And they're going to say, how come you didn't know all of these? And they're going to say, what do you mean? When did we have time? And God's going to say, what do you mean? I saw you the other day. By the way, they watched another season on the way back. This wasn't a one-time thing. It was at least a two-time thing. You could stay up 24 hours in a row to watch a show? Which Masechah did you finish in one night? My friends, if you're in finance, they're going to have questions for you. Because the boys in finance, you kill yourself when you get into that job, don't you? Right? Goldman, Morgan Stanley, any guy that goes that route. You're there 7 a.m. until what time? You guys can tell me. Till 2 a.m. If you're an accountant, there are going to be some questions. God's going to come in, he's going to have his spectacles on at the end of his metaphorical nose, and he's going to say, I have some notes. And he's going to say, let's take a little view of you guys during tax season. When you slept in the office and you didn't leave, and you didn't have a shower, but 3 days in a row you didn't have a shower, but you kvetched and you complained about not having a shower in the Shavua Shechabo of the 9 days, then you couldn't go for 3 hours without a shower. So it's only for my things that you don't have staying power? It's only for goodness, for spirituality? My friends, that's the question that Yosef asks them. You don't care about your dad? Fine. But you're coming in here to yell at me, to guilt me, to shame me into the fact that I have no kavod, I have no respect, I have no compassion for the elderly. Really? That's the line you want to use? Oh my gosh. I had a couple that was came to me to talk to me about a problem they were having. You know, about in the Shalom Bayit. Anyway, he's talking, yeah? She interrupts him. He talks, she interrupts him, she corrects him. He's talking, she interrupts him, she corrects him. Again. Anyway, he finally gets through his version. Anyway, I turn to her, I say, how do you see, let me see from your perspective. Anyway, she starts talking. He opens his mouth. He's like, well, she says, I'm talking. She's like, who doesn't let people finish sentences? I was like, oh, I know this one. You! If there's congruence, fine. My friends, worse than lying to other people is lying to yourself. What you demand from your spouse, demand from yourself. What you demand from your children, demand from yourself. What you demand from your coworkers and the people who work beneath you, demand from yourself. When a person lives that life of congruence, then even if I'm lacking here, it's acceptable, not forgivable, because we all have to develop. But at least I'm not lying. At least I'm not showing you that I just don't care about you. That's what it says when you're being incongruent. It's not because you were exhausted that you didn't study. It's because you don't care about the study of Torah. It's not because, it was too hard, because you know how to do. the same guy who kvetches about how expensive kosher is, but then only eats out in the finest non-kosher restaurants. Like, just stop lying to yourself. Hashem should bless us to have the most beautiful emet in our lives, to be proud of our behavior and our achievements. And no one is perfect. No one. And the point here is not about God catching you out, so don't do the things that will let you get caught. You know what then? Okay, so you know what? Now I'm not going to ask the guy in the bagel store for anything, and then God won't ask me for anything. It's not about avoiding the gotcha. It's about being true with yourself about why I'm not doing things that I know I should do. Why I'm not behaving in a way that I know I could behave. Why my Avraham and my Avraham are so far apart. May Hashem bless us to find that version of ourselves. Baruch Hanei Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.